Stay tuned for the Joan Quinn Profiles. Joan served the state of California as a member on the Arts Council and on the Film Commission. She was formerly on the Architectural Commission and fulfilled 2 terms on the Fine Arts Commission for the city of Beverly Hills. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview magazine, Condé Nast Publications, and the Hearst Corporation, Joan covered the world of fashion, the mysteries of food, the excitement of theater, and the international art scene. She continues to find people who are on the cutting edge of their professions. Here's Joan Agajanian Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. We're taping here in West Hollywood, and our guests are director Simon Curtis and author Solange Ritchie. Director, producer Simon Curtis was born and raised in London and graduated from Bristol University. He started his career in directing at the Royal Court Theatre, the National Theatre, Donmar Warehouse, and Lincoln Center, all of my favorite places because of the great material they present. He's directed luminaries like Maggie Smith, Julie Walters, Ian McKellen, and at the BBC, he was nominated for a multitude of awards for all of his directing, and especially his debut film, My Week with Marilyn, which was incredible, and his second equally incredible film, Woman in Gold. So when you got to Bristol University, did you think you were going to be a director?
I dreamt of it, yes.
You did?
And I certainly took the opportunity as a student to direct as much as possible, because that's the only way you can become a director, by directing.
Then how do you get to those theaters? Because those are all fantastic theaters. Did you go right to those theaters, or did you do other work?
I hate to tell you, but yes.
That's great.
In Britain, there was a scheme in those days, I think it's still running, that one of the television companies subsidised theatres to engage assistant directors. I was lucky enough to get the job as an assistant director at the Royal Court Theatre, where on my first day I met Danny Boyle and Roger Michel, who were already working there. So it was a very lucky experience.
So it wasn't working your way up. It was like right out of school in a way.
Well, but I was working my way up because I was an unpaid tea boy. So it wasn't highfalutin work. It was being the runner and a tea boy, but I was very lucky to be there, and I learned a great deal from being there.
Because there aren't that many theaters, and to be able to be there, like we call it intern, I guess, is that right?
Yeah,
assistant, or?
Yeah, assistant director was the posh name, but the job was making a lot of tea.
And then one of the great things that you directed on Broadway and in Chicago, Little Voice. How did that come about?
Well, because one of the plays I did at the Royal Court was Jim Cartwright's first play, Road. So when Steppenwolf were looking for a director for the American premiere of Little Voice, I was lucky enough to get that job, and it was a big success in Chicago and a total flop on Broadway.
But I saw it on Broadway.
Did you?
I loved it.
Oh,
I saw that play.
Well, you're one of the very few people to see it on Broadway, because I think it closed at the interval on the first night.
No.
Pretty much.
Was it that bad?
Well, it was. I had liked the show.
I thought it was good. Maybe I saw it in London then. Maybe I saw it in London because I didn't, I wasn't rushing there on Broadway to see it. Anyway, it was at Donmar?
No. I only did it in America.
Oh, you only did it in America?
Yeah.
Well, love the play. I don't know. He wrote a very, very good play.
He did, yeah.
He did write a very good play.
He did, yeah.
So, when you worked on My Week with Marilyn, how did that come about? Because that was your debut film that was like so well received.
It was pretty well received. I mean,
here's another one.
Yeah.
I like that too.
Yeah. Some of the reviews weren't that great, but I was very proud of the film, and basically I'd read the diaries on which the film is based by this young man who'd been lucky enough to be the assistant director when Olivier was directing Marilyn. And someone said to me, where did you find those diaries? In an attic somewhere. I said, no, I bought them in Barnes & Noble. And I did. I just read them and thought there would be a beautiful film in it.
Oh, so you actually initiated this whole
Yeah,
thing.
I did, yeah.
Oh, so that, of course it was your play, right? I mean, your movie to direct.
Yeah,
It was.
I hope so. Yeah.
So then how did you cast it?
I did, yeah, of course, yeah. That's. I mean, I always cast my things, and I was very lucky that Michelle Williams was brave enough to take on Marilyn, she was the starting point. And then just as lucky that Ken Branagh wanted to play Olivier, and then it was a great cast. I mean, Judi Dench, Emma Watson, and Eddie Redmayne.
And how did Eddie Redmayne was like the one who was following her around,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. But it was his story. I mean, it was basically
Right.
he was playing the man, Colin Clark, who wrote the diaries, and it's a film about my week with Marilyn. It's Colin Clark's week with Marilyn.
Where was the location?
Well, the location was Pinewood Studios, where we actually shot.
And did you build the set to replicate
Yeah, I mean,
what was?
when Michelle did that dance as Marilyn from The Prince and the Showgirl, we were actually on the same soundstage as Marilyn had danced originally.
Is that right?
And Michelle was given Marilyn's old dressing room at Pinewood.
Oh, so that was so great.
Yeah.
Did you find directing a film? I know you directed a lot for the BBC, but did you find directing this first film very similar to the stage or totally different?
As you say, I'd gone from theatre to television to film, and if you direct something like Cranford with a massive cast, including Judi Dench and Imelda Staunton, or David
great.
Copperfield with Ian McKellen and Maggie Smith, directing a film like My Week with Marilyn isn't such a huge leap whilst you're making it, but it's a very different experience the way it goes out into the world.
And what does that mean?
Well, a TV thing comes and goes very quickly.
I see.
And a film, you have to stick with and have to go around the world promoting it and read thousands of horrible reviews and so on. So
do they affect you?
They don't. Well, they do affect me. Yeah, I mean, but I'm more interested in how the film plays with an audience.
But I think it's interesting because you said like it wasn't very well received, but it was a great movie or it was a great play, right?
Well, no, but I was making the point that at the time it felt like we were troubleshooting some, reviews, but it's now perceived as a film that was received very well,
Right.
and so that's all that matters. What's the longevity?
And so from Marilyn Monroe to Woman in Gold, was it a big leap?
Again, not so much a leap, but it's a subject. A film has a subject that means a great deal to me.
The subject matter, we know the outcome. We know everything about this film. And yet you've made it compelling. How do you do something like that?
Well, I'm glad you think that. And a lot of people don't know the story, to be honest. I mean, of course, a lot of people do.
I
But,
see.
we found that a lot of people didn't know the story. But I think it's a film, it's a sort of love letter to America, it's a love letter to Los Angeles, and, even though it's a film where a lot of it takes place in 1938 back in Vienna, the majority of the film takes place in Los Angeles, where Maria Altman, played by Helen Mirren, lived for, most of her life.
Not far from here.
Not far from here in Cheviot Hills.
Yeah, not far from here. But it was suspenseful. What I say is
Good.
you know
Well-
the story, but then you're still suspenseful and you're wondering, maybe the facts are going to change. Because,
Good, I'm really glad you think that. I mean, that certainly was the objective.
And so many people I spoke to felt the same way.
Oh, good.
I mean, somebody I talked to today, I said we were going to meet, and she said, that was so exciting.
Oh, good. I'm really
know?
pleased to hear that.
Yeah.
Really pleased to hear that.
And the casting, how did you cast it?
Well, again, we started with a leading lady, and I was ecstatic that Dame Helen liked the script and wanted to do
Do it right to her? Was it
Yeah.
her? Did it have
Yeah.
her name on it?
Yeah, it did, yes. Then, because we were shooting in London, there were a lot of great actors able to come and do small parts, and obviously Ryan Reynolds was a great
Fantastic.
person to work with, and Tatiana Maslany, who plays the younger Maria, who's orphan black. I don't know if you watched that on TV, but she is a phenomenal actress, and it was great.
She wore the necklace.
No, that's
Who wore
that's
the
Anja
necklace?
Trow, who's the who plays Adele Bloch-Bauer.
She
yeah,
wore the
yeah.
necklace. And everyone was asking today, where did the necklace go?
We don't know. The last it was seen on the neck of the Nazis.
And
wife.
how did you make it?
Well, it was interesting that because we weren't sure whether Klimt had painted a real necklace or whether it was an exaggerated
right.
necklace. But yeah, it was fun to do.
So let's talk a little bit about the story, because you say some people don't really know the story. And here's this beautiful poster, Helen Mirren, and over here there's a little color, which is the Klimt color.
Yeah.
And the
Well,
gold.
The Woman in Gold is one of the most famous paintings in the world, painted by Gustav Klimt at the beginning of the 20th century, when Vienna was the golden city in the world, where so many of the great ideas of Freud and Schoenberg were all sort of evolving. And Maria Altmann was a young girl living in Vienna and came from a wealthy family, and her uncle commissioned Gustav Klimt to paint her aunt. And this was the painting that was The Woman in Gold. And when the Nazis arrived in 1938, they dismantled the entire Jewish community and took the
And
painting.
this beautiful apartment that they lived in. How did you replicate that?
Well, we were in Vienna, and we luckily were able to. We couldn't go to the actual apartment because it was a building site now, but we went to another great apartment.
Did you find photographs to know what was in it?
Yeah, we did. And then we cut to the late 90s in Los Angeles, where Maria Altmann is now an older woman, having lived most of her life in Los Angeles. And she sees the law has changed in Austria and decides to take on this campaign to try and win back this painting that has now become almost the Mona Lisa of Austria. It's a very famous painting. And she recruits Randy Schoenberg, the grandson of Arnold Schoenberg, who's also living in Los Angeles, and that's Ryan's character.
Who lived in Los Angeles. And Randy, who wrote the story?
A playwright from Britain called Alexei K. Campbell.
I see. And did Randy tell him the story, or did he
was
research
very, very
it?
helpful, Randy, in developing the film, and gave us lots of advice on the story and the script.
Because he knew Maria Altmann. He was the lawyer.
But
he
it
went
was
to
his
court.
story.
Yeah, it was his story.
Yeah.
Did he like the casting?
Yes. Yes.
Very handsome guy.
Yeah,
right?
very handsome guy. But we would do press conferences and question and answers, and they'd introduce me as the director, and there'd be sort of tepid applause, and then they'd introduce Randy, and he'd get a standing ovation.
But you mentioned Schoenberg, who was a composer. His great-grandfather, his grandfather. What was the music in the movie?
Well, mostly by Hans Zimmer and
so he
Martin
wrote
Fitz.
it?
He wrote the music. There is one excerpt from Arnold Schoenberg's beautiful music in the film.
And what about the costuming?
Well, we had a great costume designer who did a lot of research on the period and so on.
And so, did they make the costumes? Did they?
Some were, but yeah, or hired. But as I say, a lot of the film is set in the 90s. So
when you were here, it was like contemporary. The location.
Yeah, but it's tricky actually, because it's 20 years ago, before cell phones and all of that. So.
But you lived like in a little 40s house, was it?
Yeah.
Kind of a little cottage.
Yeah, bungalow in Cheviot Hills.
And so how did you make the transition? Did you do all your filming here and all the filming there, or what'd you do? How'd you do it?
We filmed in London, Vienna, and Los Angeles.
And in sequence, or how do you do that?
No, we did a lot of the interiors from all over the film in London. Then we did all our Vienna exteriors in Vienna and our Los Angeles exteriors here.
And did you stay in Los Angeles for a long time?
No.
So, the end of the story. Do you want to finish telling the story, or do we want people to see this?
People have to watch the DVD.
Right.
But,
I'm
it
gonna hold
does.
the DVD
It
up.
does in some ways have a happy ending, but it's also, we try to get the reality of, it's a mixed emotion, because Maria Altmann, it brings up and stirs up lots of memories from the past, this journey she goes on. And in some ways, I think she's hoping it's going to bring back her parents, bring back her family. And there's this very heartbreaking scene in the film where the younger Maria has to say goodbye to her parents forever. And, I think a lot of people would identify with that, in the immigrant experience and so on.
And were there friends here still of hers when you were filming? Did you meet any of her contemporaries or people from Austria?
Yes, and we also... met her sons and her grandchildren, and there's a lot of videotape of Maria that we could watch.
That you watched. Was everyone happy with the film?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm thrilled that Randy gave us the thumbs up and said this is an authentic account of what happened. And this is a tricky story to tell because my last film was My Week with Marilyn. This was My Century with Maria. It was a big story we had to tell.
You had a big story to tell. And also, when it came down to the very end, the painting was real. It was a real painting that Randy got back for her. And then where did it go?
Well, they in fact got 5 Klimts back. And the most famous one, Woman in Gold, is now on permanent display at the Noy Gallery in New York.
I know, which is great, because those scenes that you have with him, the owner of the gallery.
Ron Lauder.
Yeah, Ron Lauder, and she turns him away, and, and then she's like, let's call him. She was a very feisty woman.
Very impressive woman who had who made the best of her new life in America, was very grateful to America for welcoming her, and but also wanted to try and make amends for the past. And it's quite moving. The film starts with her sister passing away, making her the last remaining descendant of that who was alive in 1938.
Yeah, it was very moving. It was very happy. Yeah. It was very tearful. It had us all on the edge of our seats.
Oh, good.
And what do we see next from Simon Curtis?
I don't know. I'd like to be able to tell you. Yeah.
No, we don't know? Because it seems like you deal with these people films. People.
Yeah, I like to think that. I mean, as the studios become more and more about gigantic tentpole movies based on comics and so on, I'm going in the opposite direction, and I've always been drawn to drama because they are the stories of human beings and so on. So
and human beings really appreciate it.
I hope
They're
so.
moved.
I
They
hope
get
so.
moved.
Yeah, I've been absolutely ecstatic about the way the American audience have responded to the film and kept it in the cinemas for 14 or 15 weeks, which is very rare these days.
And did you go all over the world with it?
I went a bit over the world, but mostly I went all over America. Yeah.
I just saw it was in Stockholm.
Did you?
I just saw this
great.
poster in Swedish.
Yeah.
I guess.
Oh, how amazing! Yeah.
So.
Someone just sent me a Korean poster of it.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
But we have the original.
You do.
And we do have the director. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you,
And thanks for watching this part of the show. We'll be right back with author Solange Ritchie. Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome back to the Joan Quinn Profiles. I'm here with author Solange Ritchie, who was born and raised in Jamaica, went to high school in Key West, Florida, graduated from the University of Florida, and earned a JD at Western State Law School in Southern California. Solange has been the recipient of awards from the California Bar Association, and she serves on charity and legal boards throughout the state. She continues to practice law while she writes. Or is it, Solange, you write while you continue to practice law? Which one? You continue to practice while you write? Is it blah, blah, blah? How do you do all this?
Well, I like to say that I'm a lawyer by day and a thriller writer by night.
Is that when you write?
I write a lot on the weekends and then also on vacation.
And how do you do it? With the legal pad?
Actually, for this particular book, the ending came to me writing in Mexico with a legal pad in hand.
You did have a legal pad.
Yes. But
this book you're pointing to is called The Burning Man.
Yes.
And before we get to The Burning Man, I want to go through a little bit of your background. Did being from an immigrant family set you aside from your friends, or how did you feel in Florida? Because you were growing up from Jamaica, right?
Yes. It was difficult. I immigrated at age 11, which is always a difficult age, I think, especially for a girl.
Yeah.
And so, it took a little getting used to. I also, in Jamaica, I was in private school, which was uniforms and Catholic school nuns and that whole thing. And then my family, when we first moved here, I went into public school for a year. And then when we moved to Key West, went back into private school. So that was a little bit of a transition as well.
But so you were moving around a lot.
Yes. Yeah.
As you were moving, did you have other family members, brothers and sisters?
Yes, I have 2 older brothers.
Oh, so it kind of had some kind of continuity for you as far as family went,
Yes,
right?
yes. But I do have a very big extended family still in Jamaica.
Oh, you do?
Yes.
Do you go back and forth?
Once every 4 years or so, yes.
Oh, not so often,
Yeah,
really?
yeah.
Do they come here?
They do, but usually they go to Florida because that's where my parents and most of my family.
Was your father in the
is.
law?
No, he was not. He actually, my family is one of the 21 founding families in Jamaica, which I didn't even know until I moved to the U.S.
Really?
Yeah.
You found out history
Yes,
from here?
I did.
There were 21 families?
21 families that founded pretty much the business and the government in Jamaica. And
So he was in politics?
Yeah, politics, and then also merchant, the merchant business.
Were they landowners, probably?
Yes, we had quite a bit of land, and there's a whole story that goes behind that as well.
The next book.
Maybe.
Well, maybe. It sounds like the next book. When did this writing come about?
It actually came out of a little bit of a tragedy. When I was 37, my first husband passed away unexpectedly. And so I was widowed at a young age. And it came about partially to deal with his loss and partially to deal with his grief. And legal writing can be very rote. And so the creative writing side of me kind of stepped forward.
So when you were at the University of Florida, you didn't take any kind of writing classes?
Yeah, I did take journalism and broadcast.
Oh, you did?
Yes.
So it was kind of in your blood?
Yes.
And then when you started writing this, did you take writing classes?
No, it just kind of came. I mean, I have 2 books that preceded.
And what were those about?
One was about corporate espionage.
No.
And the first one, honestly, I don't even remember what it was about. But funny enough, when Morgan James took on this book, they told me that supposedly 3 is the magic number where you find your craft.
The third?
Yes.
But were the other ones published too?
No.
But they call this your first book, right? Your debut book.
It's my debut as far as getting it into print.
Right. So you didn't actually follow in your father's footsteps as far as the law.
No.
Why did you decide to go to law school?
Just because I think law is a very exciting field for women. You always hear about the you can't do it all and you can't have it all, and I don't agree with that at all. I think that for women especially, law is a field that can catapult into many other things.
Were there a lot of women in your class?
At the time it was about 50-50.
When I worked at the law school many years ago, maybe there was 1 or 2 women in the class and maybe a couple in the night school. Well, so things have changed quite a bit.
Definitely. One of my favorite justices locally is Justice Eileen Moore, and I don't know if you know who she is, but she went to law school, came out, went to Vietnam, became a nurse in Vietnam, came back, and was basically told, you can't do what it is that you want to do, and so she's been a real trailblazer.
But that's what you were saying, because the law school opens up so many different venues for you, which I think is great. When you started writing because of your tragedy, you wrote those other books, right?
Yes.
And then how did Burning Man come about? Oh, I'm turning the pages at night going, I don't want to turn another page. It's very scary.
I actually had to tone it down a little bit with my publisher, but the story itself came about through a real life story out of Florida about 20 years ago.
Did you see it in the paper? Did you read it in law school?
I had read it. I had one of these crime encyclopedia type books, and I just happened to read about it in there. So this idea always stuck with me as far as the.
So it was way past.
Yes.
It was in the past.
Yes.
Nothing contemporary.
No.
Oh.
No, and then I just, the idea came to me, and the character was very interesting to write, the bad guy, because one of the things that I love to read is thrillers, obviously, and I loved Silence of the Lambs, but I always wondered what made Hannibal Lecter so scary, and so this takes you inside.
And what made him so scary? We didn't really, we heard his voice.
Yes.
But when you're reading, you don't hear a voice.
Yeah. But
You know,
hear,
we heard his voice on the screen.
yes, but this takes you a little bit into the background, into what creates that type of a character.
Would you say that they're the same kind of characters?
They're similar. They're similar.
Well, maybe all the psychological problems are the same, right?
Yes, actually, one of the really interesting things about writing the book was doing the research, because I ended up with a binder that's probably about 3 inches thick.
That's a legal binder.
Yeah, it's about yay thick, and that helped to really formulate the character in my mind as far as who I wanted to create, what I wanted him to be like.
But you wrote about what I find so interesting is living in Southern California,
Yes.
and you live here in Southern California. You write about the names of the streets and the cities,
Yes.
and moving from, you know, one town to the other, and how far it is, and really setting the scene.
Yes, yes. And one of the ways that I do that is when I write, I close my eyes and I literally put myself in that scene. That, for example, the Doheny Beach scene. You know, you really have to close your eyes and picture the ocean, the seagulls.
You don't go there and sit there and write.
No. I do
That's
it. I do it in my head. I do it in my head.
And then, who are these characters?
Well,
Do you know these characters? Have you seen them before? Do you
Um,
work with them?
the female character is inspired in many ways through many of the issues that I think women face on a daily basis.
So she's a composite,
Yes,
probably, huh?
yeah.
She's not you.
She's a little bit of me as far as the work life and the struggle to, you know, to hold your career together, to hold your family together.
And she's good at what she does.
She's great
She's studied it. She knows what to
Yeah.
do. She has instinct, as you
Yes.
say.
Yeah, she's got that sixth sense, which has always been something that I've always been fascinated with.
So, yeah. And then you have the FBI people.
Right. And that was a whole another journey of studying, you know, what they do, what the behavioral sciences units actually do. And
Do you know them?
I don't personally, but I did a lot. I'm a good researcher.
There must be. You must be. And then putting it on page. So how did you balance like Kat, who's the investigator? She had to balance her life. How do you balance yours in comparison to hers, and does that fit into the picture?
I think like many women, we have to always we are always balancing and juggling and trying to figure out how to make things work. And you know, we're lucky living in today's day and age that we can, you know, be on the speakerphone and be typing on the computer and doing all those things that, you know, they couldn't do in the old days. So yeah, I think that part of her character very much embodies me.
Do you think it's easier now? I think maybe with the phones and the computers.
I think it's harder.
You think it's harder?
Yeah, because I think about it, we never leave our phones behind.
No.
You know, I have
You
clients.
mean we're constantly with it?
Yeah, we're constantly on. You know, I have clients that will, you know, sometimes email me or text me at all hours of the day or night, and you know, it's hard when you go on vacation to just put it aside.
So maybe it is.
Yeah.
You don't introduce this killer until chapter 4. And I've like circled chapter 4. The bad guy comes in. And all of a sudden you just tell us all about him, what he's going to do and how he's going to murder this woman.
Yeah. I wanted to kind of keep him a little bit of a secret.
But you open him up so much right there.
Yeah.
And then you have to keep reading to
find. Yeah. But you actually meet him in chapter 1 where he's watching what they're doing, but you don't know it's him.
Oh.
Yeah, when they come to get the body.
Oh, he's watching
Yeah,
it?
He's watching the...
Woo, you just gave me the chills.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's watching the Life Fleet chopper come to remember. He says, "Be careful, boys, with the patient."
Oh.
Yeah, that's him.
Can you tell me anything more about him?
He hides in plain sight, which is
That's just what you said.
which is one of his scarier traits. And he is brilliant and manipulative in a way that I'm not going to share with you because that would blow it for you. But
why does he use acid?
He uses acid because he enjoys it because of the way that it eats away at not only the skin but the soul.
That because you say he enjoys the acid.
Yes.
when you're writing about him,
Yeah.
or he enjoys something like that.
Yes, and that's why the cover shows, this little part right here where it's being, the cover is
right
being
here?
being eaten away. Yeah.
Okay, let's change to charities. Do you because this book is really great, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
But are you an advocate for women's rights?
Yes, very much so. And then I think I mentioned I have a brother with Down syndrome, so I'm very involved with the Special Olympics. And my family's always been involved with Special Olympics. And then also with a lot of groups that help female law students, that kind of thing. I'm always...
Do you come across those kind of cases? Do you try any of those kind of cases? Domestic violence cases? Nothing?
No. My husband and I do primarily civil law, which is, business cases, environmental cases, partnership disputes.
Nothing like this book.
No.
Nothing like this book.
No, and that's funny because that's one of the first things that people usually ask me is this related to a real life character?
Well, you do,
Yeah.
and it must have been at one time, right? Because you said it came out of a...
Yes, it came out of a real story out of Florida of a physician who fell very much in love with a woman who ended up marrying, and then she died, and for a variety of reasons, he used chemicals and things to basically almost keep her body in a state of suspended animation.
so that he could have her with him.
Whenever, which sounds really creepy, but it was a real case.
It's
so.
very creepy.
Yeah.
And we're glad you were with us, but we're not going to keep you very long. You drove up from Orange County. We
Yes.
appreciate it. You're here in West Hollywood.
Yes.
And we loved having you.
Oh, thank you. It was a pleasure. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. And thank you for watching. Keep writing to JAQUINN1 at AOL.com. And we'll see you next time on the Joan Quinn Profiles.